Jonothan Barrett. He's Managing Director for Commodity Broking Services and is in Sydney this morning. So first of all, Jonathan, what the heck is going on with gold? Have you been surprised that it's been sold off as well?
Look, Lindsay, definitely. I mean, yesterday was probably one of the most volatile days I've ever seen in my trading history, close to $116 range. But I think yesterday was more of a panicked move in probably relatively liquid times. But generally speaking, I think people sort of got out of gold because they needed cash, got out of gold because of the initial margins were increased on the CME, and it was part of an overall commodity trade where people bought dollars and sold commodities, and of course gold was part of that basket. So if anything, there was a combination of things that has caused this run on the metal, but you know, I think runs like this can only last for so long before we get back to good value, and I think we're pretty much sure, pretty close to it at current levels.
Pretty close to a bottom for gold. What level is that bottom?
Well, I think the important thing to note is that we've got a range now, and that range is 1530 on the downside, and of course we know the old high 1920, then 1760. So I think whilst the market gravitates at the lower end of this range now, a lot of traders will see that as a sign that, well, it's safer to enter because I know where I'm wrong, and obviously that's a breakthrough 1530. And when you can see some of the developments occurring in the Eurozone and in America, you can start to also get a more of a fundamental picture that perhaps we're close to a low as well. So I think the volatility's there, but I think a low's in place, and I think dips I think you can look at to buy.
What about copper? Have we got a low in place there? We've seen a 31% dip since February, since its February peak. We've seen 17% wiped off in the previous 7 days.
Yeah. Lindsay, no, copper's the interesting one. Copper has actually broken a significant trendline support, which started actually November 2008 when copper was trading versus the COMEX price 130. So I think copper in itself has actually entered a structural bear market. So I feel that any support we get over the mend in Europe will see copper higher, but I don't see copper actually continuing to trade and test new highs. In fact, I probably see copper commencing to actually trade higher, but only higher to go lower. Remember the PMI data as we got out of China? That's indicating that we are seeing a slowdown in the #1 consumer. That is a bit of a concern for me, because if they're not consuming at the rate they used to, then China won't be on the bid. In fact, they'll be waiting for the market to come to them. So if anything there, any rally in copper, we actually feel is an opportunity to sell.
What about the oil market? What's going on here? Because you've got prices around $80 a barrel in New York. You've got them at 105 for Brent. You have talk that Saudi Arabia could start ramping down its production because Libya is going to be coming back to market.
Look, oil at the moment, it has been relatively crazy in terms of its pricing, but the good thing about oil is it's been actually trading in a nice range. And I think when we look at the range, anything sub 80 I think is good value, because we got hints from OPEC that anything below that would be a concern. So we actually feel that if the market trades below 80, as it did yesterday when we got down to 77.50, it was quite happy to take it back higher. If we do see it sub 80, we'll obviously see OPEC come out and say it's a bit too low. So I actually feel that oil is at the lower end of its range, and I actually feel we're looking forward to a little bit of a lift. We have been bearish oil for some time, ever since we broke through that 85, and also because we couldn't get through US $90 a barrel. But at the moment we feel we're at the lower end of the range, and given what's happening out there fundamentally, I think we'll probably look forward to a lift. So if anything, we're a buy on dip on oil.
All right, Jonothan Barrett, Managing Director for Commodity Broking Services, thanks for sharing your calls with us this morning.